Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Heritage Home Family Farm podcast. We're here, we're sharing our journey along the way of our unconventional homesteading slash small farming. It's not really homesteading, I don't think, if you built a new house on your property, but we are dedicated to learning how to grow and produce a lot of our own food and develop some economic impact in our local community, as well as produce food for those in our vicinity. And so we hope that our conversations are always encouraging to you. You've been along the journey so far. It's been pretty general as far as talking about property and vision and maybe where to start. But now we're going to get into some specifics. It's a great time of year to do that. It is February now, and the year is coming, and it's coming quick. And hopefully, along the way, there will be some good tidbits for you to pick up. And hopefully, we're ahead enough of those tidbits that you can put them into action even this year.
Yeah, we're super excited to talk about something actually that Darren's particularly very passionate about. And I am just along here for the ride, but I have a lot of opinions and observations. So we're excited to talk to you guys about meat chickens today and kind of share our story, what we've learned, things that we would recommend, statistics and facts that you can find anywhere on the internet, but how that actually applies on the ground in the farm.
Yeah, and it's a challenge whenever you're trying to learn something new. You're trying to grow something, and you're adjusting to the climate. You're adjusting to your land. And in this case, with meat chickens, we jumped in. We ordered our first meat chickens before we even moved onto the property here,
And that's a story.
anticipating that they would come. And we mixed up our hatchery names and searched and called and couldn't find a PO for those chickens. And so we ordered more chickens, and then they all came the same week.
Which actually turned out in our favor because we totally undersold what we could perform in 1 year.
Yeah, we thought 75. That sounds like a lot. Like that's a good chunk to start. Then we ended up with 75 times two. And it really worked out well. It worked out in our favor to grow, more than we would eat in a year and have the ability to have some extra. But we learned a lot that first year
We did.
for sure. Now, I think the main thing that we want to juxtapose here as we're talking about raising meat animals of any variety, but in this case, chickens specifically, the benefit to chickens, it for sure, is that your growth time is extremely short. And so if you have a short season or you want to do multiple rounds of a small amount of processing labor, chickens are definitely a way to go. And it's a familiar thing that is much less intimidating to process compared to a pig or a cow or a goat, something much larger. So I think it's a good place to start. But if you've never processed meat before, there will be a lot of challenges there too.
Yeah, so let's start at the beginning. We moved onto this property in May. Technically, we didn't move into our actual home until July. And because the year we ordered the chickens, they were having a bird flu, which I can't even remember a year now where they don't have their bird flu.
I know it's every year.
Every year it seems like it. And so we put our order in like February
Yep.
that year, and there wasn't any available meat birds until August,
Yeah, it was really, really late that we got birds.
the first year.
Yeah, and it proved to be a challenge because a couple of reasons. One, even here in Idaho, where we live in Zone 5, there's bad weather days
Yeah.
all year round. Like when the weather pattern changes, it blows and it gets really windy and it rains sideways and it cools down at night. Like we're at a high elevation, and so even when the days are warm, the nights are still cool. And those things really posed some challenges that first year. So that first year we raised Cornish Cross, and that is the conventional um, meat chicken, the highest ratio of feed to processed weight conversion If you are a large scale farmer, or if you're really looking to pinch the money per pound,
Yeah, and time, the shortest.
yep,
It also hyper focuses on the chicken breast.
yeah,
Like that is what it's been bred to grow quickly and a lot of, which is very American.
yeah, yeah. Proportionally, the chicken has more breast meat than all the meat, the rest of the meat on it put together. And that is the commercial chicken that's grown for food in the United States.
And when we started experiencing our first round of meat boards with the Cornish Cross, we actually, I would say, we're kind of taken back, I suppose. They are delayed in their feather growth, probably because they're focused so much on growing large quickly.
Yeah.
They also are not very good foragers, which was our passion to have pasture poultry to be able to like move them every day out on our alfalfa field. And they just didn't enjoy it the way that I thought they would. They more flopped
Yeah.
down on it,
Yeah.
like bedded down.
Yeah. So both of those elements, I think, were the first big elements that we noticed that were negatives when it came to this breed. So all the chicks did really well until they started getting large enough, and they would wet their bedding incredibly quick. But since they had no feathers for, I would say, like past the 4 week mark, like they lose their chick feathers really quick. And then it was well into the 4th week before there was any sort of significant feathering. And so you just got naked chickens basically running around, and they get cold really, really easy.
Yeah.
And so that was a struggle. And then that second struggle, like Marissa mentioned, that they just don't forage well. They love the feeder. They love where the chicken food is that you give them. And they're the picture of gluttony, man. They will eat and eat and eat and then just pass out with their face right in the food and then wake up and eat some more.
And foraging is great for many reasons. The protein that they're getting from the bugs and the earth, but also it is like they are chickens. They're supposed to, scratch and to move and to exercise their muscles, and we just weren't seeing that.
Yeah.
In the Cornish Cross. Now we're giving you just our testimony, our experience, and what we prefer, which we'll share in a minute. The next breed that we've learned about, but we have heard a lot of homesteaders have success with Cornish Cross because they do grow so fast, so short of a time. What was it, 8 weeks?
Yeah. You're really a full size bird, 7.5, 8 weeks.
Yeah, and that's a great. Like time wise, that is awesome.
Yeah.
However, we do live in Southeast Idaho with a really high elevation, and we learned that this doesn't necessarily bode well with the Cornish Cross because of their large breasts and their long development.
Yeah, because they grow so fast, they have a higher propensity for like heart and lung disease. So I was talking with some other homesteaders though, and we've talked about this in our previous episodes where community is so important. And there really is a mixed bag. Some people find the trade-offs of the Cornish Cross really worth it. Some people have had success highly managing their feed. And we took the general course of like 12 hours on feed and 12 hours off feed. But you can be even more specific and like weigh out your feed per bird to put out for them every day during their weeks of development in order to actually slow down how fast they grow, which seems almost silly, but that is the type of like really finessed management that is the feedback that we've gotten that they require.
Yeah.
And so we went on a hunt.
We did, but also Cornish Cross are just prone to heart issues.
Yes. Oh
like,
yeah. Even commercially.
Yeah, and even if you do all these steps, I mean, like there's always sadly, there's always failures.
Right. There's always loss. And you expect kind of one loss rate, I think somewhere less than 10%. And our loss rate that first year was a lot higher than that.
Much higher than we anticipated.
Right.
Okay, yes, Darren said it. He's building the suspense. We went on a search,
Yeah.
and actually we used our community to
Yeah.
help us narrow down, like, okay, what do you do in this area then? And we also realized that we aren't a commercial farm.
Right.
We are a homestead, farmstead, local. We're raising birds for our family and for our community, but we're not shipping them, across the states. So what was going on? What were some other options we asked around?
Yeah, and we're willing to try out if you want a really, really, really mild flavored chicken, Cornish Cross is the way to go. And if you love that super large breast and you're not really interested in thighs and drumsticks and wings, Cornish Cross, that chicken is bred for that. But we're interested in trying out new things in all of those areas and taking some risks on them. And so that's what we did year two. And we raised like a big red broiler from McMurray Hatchery, which is essentially a Freedom Ranger. Every hatchery
That's their own name
that I've looked at, yeah, they've all got some very slight variety on essentially the same chicken, which is, it's not a heritage breed chicken per se, but
does meaning.
Oh yeah, meaning it's been bred specifically for meat production, but not so much. Like they've retained a lot of their previous characteristics that I think make them more like a chicken and less like a gluttonous dinosaur.
So let's tell you some of the things that we liked about the Red Ranger.
Yeah, they feather out really young. So they lose their chick feathers and then they immediately started growing actual feathers to stay warm.
Which is so important where we live, because if we want to do multiple rounds, our last frost is like May.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And our first frost is
in September.
End of September. Yeah. So, if you want to keep your birds healthy in temperature wise,
right,
you need to take into account how many rounds you can do, because the Red Rangers take longer.
Yeah.
Cornish Cross takes 8 weeks. You said 7.5, 8 weeks.
Yeah. And these Red Rangers, they really don't reach their nice processing weight until like 11 to 12 weeks.
Which is a big difference.
But yeah, it's a whole nother month.
Yeah, which you're feeding.
Yep.
But they are way better foragers.
Way better foragers. Man, they loved it. As soon as we got them out of the little enclosed shelter area, we started them in as chicks to make sure they're plenty warm. They thrived.
Yeah.
Out in the field, out in the alfalfa, the bugs. They loved all the parts of that.
And even though we had them in our brooder about the same amount of time that the Cornish Cross, because their size takes a little longer to get to maturity, Darren mentioned earlier that the Cornish Cross really just wet down their bed. Like
really bad.
It was gross. And you had to really be on top of it for changing. With the Red Rangers, it wasn't as enormous of materials that you were dealing with.
Yeah, part of it's that first 2 to 3 weeks, they just grow a little slower.
Yeah.
And then part of it is just naturally foraging wise, they would scratch at the bedding and stir it up themselves instead of just packing a layer of wet on top of it and it's dry underneath.
Right. So we were really happy to get them out on pasture because they really scratched around. We moved them daily. We are going to go over the materials or the infrastructure that we made to see if it provides any encouragement to you here after we talk about the two different breeds. But they just seemed happier. I know. Can you really say an animal is happy? But let me just tell you, I am not all about the butchering side as Darren is, and so he will be much more informative on that. I am all about happy animals because Joel Salatin talks about this a lot in regards to his hogs, but he says you can taste the difference from happy animals.
Yeah.
Because animals that are under stress or not, enjoying the sunshine and the ground and all those things, they actually build tension in their meat.
Right.
And you can taste it. I am a foodie, but I haven't Don't quote me on if I had two chicken breasts in front of me and I had to decide which one. However, speaking of chicken breasts,
Yeah.
Darren over here is a huge fan of chicken thighs.
Oh yeah, that is the best cut on a chicken for sure.
And tell us about the Red Ranger.
And these Red Rangers, man, I was so impressed. I think because just the way that they're bred, they still made a nice full chicken breast. But they majorly put out the weight in the thighs and the drumsticks. And
And the fat.
Oh, and the fat.
I know that sounds funny.
The
But
greatest.
it's really good. Collagen, all the things in this chicken fat.
Yeah, the greatest, like, rich yellow fat on these birds. Like, I don't know. So we'll do a lot of times, we'll process them all whole, and we'll package them whole. But then when we thaw them out for our family, we roast whole chickens, some. But then we'll cut them up and we'll do chicken breasts and thighs. Like, we'll do boneless thighs. And we'll barbecue drumsticks, and then, man, the carcass goes in the soup pot, and we cook down some of the most amazing chicken broth out of these chickens.
Thick, rich, like totally worth it.
Yeah,
Have you ever made chicken broth where it's just like,
kind of watery.
yeah, and you're like, is there even a difference between, water and this broth? With this broth, what you're getting. I would also say, like Darren said, the meat of the chicken for a Red Ranger tastes slightly different than a Cornish Cross.
I would say so.
People have used the word gamey. I don't think I'd use that word.
It's like hardly, if it is at all.
Yeah, I would use like more flavorful.
Yeah,
like you can even see it in the color. Like it's more pink.
It's like real chicken.
Yeah.
And if you've ever had those chicken breasts that, like, they seem like they're injected with something, or like even when you cook them all the way, they have no meat fiber in it at all. Like, it is the farthest opposite of that. They're not tough. It's not stringy, but definitely there is substance and texture to the meat. And I think, man, I've just been really, really happy with them.
Yeah. And also, health-wise, like we mentioned with the Cornish Cross,
Yeah.
not as many health issues.
Yeah, especially as they got bigger.
Yeah. We were good once they got there.
We had no issues with, like, walking out and, yep, 2 of them are dead this morning because who knows why. We didn't have any losses like that. All the losses that we had this year, we really felt were our own fault from learnings that we also are going to share with you guys.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe that's where we go next. It's just like some of the infrastructure.
Well, everything can't be sunshine and rainbows. There are some cons to the Red Ranger.
Oh, yeah.
We definitely talked about the time.
Yep.
Right? But also, this is a unique one, but it's very up my alley because it's all about aesthetics. The Cornish Cross is a white feathered bird.
Sure.
So when you pluck the bird, it looks beautiful, right? Like the Red Ranger and even some other hatcheries have a version of it have black feathers. Our Red Rangers have brown feathers.
Right.
But when you pluck them, sometimes the inside where the feather goes.
Yeah, like, I don't know, the little pore or whatever where the feather comes out of it. Yeah, the little bit of feather is retained in there. And it is on a Cornish Cross too. It's just part of plucking chickens.
Right.
But you see it a little more sometimes with the red. And then, like Marissa mentioned, did you say we did process a few black chickens that we ordered that we knew were black?
And they're also like a Freedom Ranger.
Yeah, yes, type of breed. But
never again.
Yeah, the black chickens are so hard to get plucked and looking nice for a package or nice to roast. We ended up like skinning most of what we eat off of the red chickens just because the black chickens because the feathers just stick more.
I know that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things,
but it might.
But we are selling our chickens, and so we want them to be aesthetically pleasing. Also, we're really into hospitality in our home.
Just serve up a feathery bird.
I know. I would be like, sorry.
Another thing too, and we haven't mentioned is those black chickens we raised. They did come a straight run. We didn't have an
Yeah.
option to order only roosters. And let me tell you, if you have not seen the difference,
There's a difference.
there's a huge difference. The males, they really did pretty well. They almost as large size wise as the Freedom Rangers. The females, man, we were getting like cleaned processed butcher weights of like 3 pounds.
Which that's not common.
Uh,
Tell them what we
yeah,
get.
normally all of the other chickens were like 5.5, 6 pounds was really where our average
Like
was.
half the size, guys.
Yeah,
For a female. And so
really, really small. Kind of
definitely.
disappointing.
Although we didn't talk about this con for the red Freedom Ranger, Red Rangers,
Yeah.
they were a straight run of all males. And by the time we got ready to butcher,
Oh yeah, they're 12 weeks.
they're
Man.
being nails.
Oh yeah, we got all the crowing and
Yeah.
a little bit of fighting, but overall they did good. They had plenty
Yeah.
of space, which I think is key.
I think only one got picked on.
Yep.
And we still butchered it and we just had it for our family.
It's just a little scabby on the
Yeah.
skin in a few spots, but way edible.
Yeah. But crowing. They're
Oh yeah.
and
Yes.
you're like, oh, how many roosters do you have? Ah.
40, 80.
Okay, so before we get into materials, I
Yeah.
think it is important that we tell them the progression for year 3 now.
Oh yeah, year 3. So year 2, we did 200 of the Red Rangers and then 50 of those black chickens we mentioned.
I remember year 1 was 150.
Yeah. And then this year we're going for 400.
400, guys.
So the plan is 4 separate groups of 100.
And that is something we learned, which we'll tell you about in the materials.
Yeah, and we're gonna. I think we get a new group every 2 to 3 weeks because the season's long. You know, the amount of time they take to maturity, you have to overlap, or else you're not gonna get more than one group in. So we're overlapping. We're getting a new group starting, I think, the 1st of May.
Yeah.
Or the end of April, then we're getting a new group every 3 weeks. And then we'll process our last group, I think, the 1st of October.
And we'll have to do another podcast all about processing. Our family,
Yeah.
The first time we ever processed, we had community members and friends come over and do it with us.
Super great.
We did 150 in like a few hours.
Yeah.
It was not a big deal. And then year 2, Darren's like, we got to figure out how to do this just our family.
Yeah, like we've talked about like the community is awesome. We love the community, but we got to teach our kids. That's part of our mission here. And then another thing is I don't want to rely on somebody else's help every time. And so knowing that we're not in so far that we can't do it on our own was important to me.
So I think that we did 95 one day, just the kids and us. And we have 5 helpful kids.
Right.
And the 2 of us. So that's a big crew. Our oldest, though, is 11. So they're young kids.
5 young kid workers.
They're amazing.
But they busted it out.
Yeah.
So I think
we'll do another podcast.
Yeah, whole podcast about chicken processing, and we might even shoot some video to lay into it with processing chickens this summer. I think it'd be encouraging. But
Okay, well, I'm really excited to talk about the materials because one of the things that I like to do is to be creative. And so when we were talking about pasture poultry, we really wanted to get them out on pasture, right? And we've seen a lot of these videos about people making chicken tractors, and they look awesome.
A lot of great designs out there.
Great designs. You can even lift them yourself and pull them to new pasture. Made some with cattle panels, some made of wood, a lot of great options. Well, my grandparents retired and moved to a home off of their property, I don't know, multiple years before we moved here.
Yeah.
And they gifted my brother at the time this like carport.
Like a 12 by 24.
Yeah, that my grandpa had bought for his boat, like a little boat.
Yeah.
And my brother was like, I'm not using this. Do you guys want it in Idaho when you move? And we're like, yeah, we don't really know what we're going to use it for yet.
Yeah.
But then we got out of here and we were like, do you know what we should use this for?
chicken tractor.
A chicken tractor. So tell us how we did.
Yeah, so I mean, it worked out really pretty well for a learning curve. Um, we just, the legs came in two sections, and so instead of a 6 foot or a 7 foot wall, we just did one section of legs. So it's about 3 feet tall on the sides, and then has the nice, really heavy duty tarp cover over the whole thing. And we just fenced it in with chicken wire and put it on some wooden skids that I fashioned out of some lumber, and that was a little bit of a learning curve.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that because I mean, not for that something that huge, because it was just even with joints and big overlapping pieces, that frame did not hold up well year one, and needed a lot of reinforcement by year two, and it's not going to last much longer.
Yeah, Darren's going to rebuild it with steel or aluminum
Yeah,
skids, and we're going to try to film it. So make sure you're liking, subscribing, following us on Instagram, all things, because he's going to show us step by step how to do it.
yeah, and so we built another one the second year, out of drill pipe in the base, and then a carport on the top. But we liked the carport. Yeah, you have to use a tractor to move it. And so that's a benefit though that we have, is we have a small tractor that's able to move it really easily. The kids can move it with the tractor.
It's a very simple tractor.
Yeah.
Like I can use it.
Hydrostatic drive, 25 horsepower. It's not big, but it moves a chicken tractor easy. And so that made it easier for us to do that size of one versus needing to build a man-powered moving one.
And when you have such a big one, a big chicken tractor, there is room for all your chickens. You can put 100 chickens in it easily. You're not building, like a lot of people recommend like 10 to 25 in the smaller ones.
So you also, you got a lot of little chicken tractors.
So you're moving. And so even this year, we'll at one point move 3 a day.
I think
four a day?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, 4 a day. But it takes you like 5-10 minutes once the tractor's out there. And we talked about that, I think, on a previous podcast, that if you're already doing it, doing another one, it really doesn't take you that much time because you're already out there.
Right.
So we are excited about that. And we are buying our carports, not the first one, but the other ones at Harbor Freight. And Darren is really good, for better or worse, at watching.
And Harbor Freight is a dangerous, dangerous place. And listen, they're not the highest quality. No. And we definitely did some modifications to the one we got last year. And now we know those modifications. But we just got them on sale.
Yeah.
They were on like a flash sale.
We just couldn't afford not to.
Like 40% off or something, though. So we bought more. And that's the plan, is we're pretty committed to carports. These ones are 10 by 20, so they're a tiny bit smaller. But a couple other implements, though, that we've found crucial. Marissa, she mentioned so well that we like to be creative. And I think there's a lot of creativity that comes in homesteading.
You have to, financially. It's so hard not to be creative.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to be, because you go look at the prices of like the commercial thing or the really awesome one, and it's expensive. Mm-hmm. And so food and water supply for chickens is essential. They've got to have water all the time. They've got to have food most or all of the time. And year one, we did like 5-gallon buckets for food and water.
And you hung them from the top of the carports.
Yeah, and it was a struggle on both accounts. Now, it was nice because it was hanging and you can move it with the carport, but it was a struggle on so many other accounts. Let me tell you, every little screw in water cup or water spigot or whatever that you can put in a 5-gallon bucket, they all break. I'm convinced. I've bought every single one of them. The cheap ones, the expensive ones, they all break or leak. And it's not hard. If you got one leaker in a 5-gallon bucket, then the 5-gallon bucket's gone in an hour. And then if you're not out there checking on your chickens again, oh, well, shoot, they were down a whole bucket of water and then they drank the other one.
And the other hard thing with the buckets is that if you put the lid on it, with the water in it, it was so heavy that if you could imagine the string would like lock it down in place. And so
Yeah.
it was really hard to get it open to fill the water with the hose
Yep.
that we were bringing out there, especially for the kids, because we're an active family all doing it together. And so then when we decided to leave the lid off of the 5-gallon bucket,
Yeah.
the chickens wanted to roost on it.
Yeah, they wanted to roost on it either way, but then they wanted to roost on it and try to drown themselves in
Right.
the bucket when they
So smart.
inevitably fall in. So water
We didn't
system,
have any drown in the bucket.
right?
We saved them all.
They're extra kind of special though, those chickens.
Super special.
So water, we ended up. It's from a website called Farmer Boy, and
Which is fitting because Darren's favorite book is Farmer Boy.
it's a great book. Laura Ingalls Wilder, right?
Yes.
So it's this bell-shaped, and if you're watching on YouTube right now, you can see me describe it with my hands. It's this bell-shaped waterer that has a trough all the way around the bottom, and it's fed by a 3/8 inch hose, and then you have as large as you want gravity-fed water storage outside your coop somewhere.
Which Darren built like a stand.
Yep. So I just built a little shelf. It doesn't have to be high off the ground. It's just like 3.5 feet off the ground. I could put a 15 or a 20-gallon, like a half of a barrel size, drill a hole, shove that 3/8 hose into the bottom of it, and then the water was way easier to clean. I had zero issues with it leaking, and you could set the water level. There's lots of room for all the chickens to get around the waterer. Each waterer will do like up to 100 chickens or 150 chickens, a lot. And then the water only needed to be filled once a day. One 20-gallon water barrel did it really well. So
that was encouraging. That
downside,
was down.
$50 a piece.
Okay.
I'm such a cheapskate.
Yeah. I mean, you're probably like, that's it, dude. Just buy the water thing, which is exactly what I told him too. But Darren is very resourceful.
But I'd already, like, the dumb thing is I'd spent $50 buying every screw into a bottom of a 5-gallon bucket thing you could buy, plus all the buckets.
Yeah.
Which aren't cheap either.
No.
Unless you get them free at Harbor Freight.
Thank you, Harbor Freight.
But
helping us out.
All in all, Farmer Boy.
We are not sponsored.
Yeah. Those Farmer Boy waterers, man, they made a huge difference this last year.
The food, too, we learned the first year we used those 5-gallon buckets. We had the openings on all of them. We found that two things. One, we were doing the Cornish Cross, and we already mentioned they're like gluttonous little dinosaurs.
Yeah.
So one little Cornish Cross would come in and put his face in the hole and eat, and then pass out. And no one else could get to that hole. So that was, con number one.
Yeah.
And number two, there was a lot of waste that kind of fell out.
Yeah.
And so that was a bummer since we're paying for the feed.
The feed, yeah.
And so what did you do?
Well, I was like, man, we got to get like a commercial style trough feeders. And I don't remember how much they were exactly. It was like $60 or $80 for like a 4-foot one. And that was supposed to feed, I don't remember, not that many chickens by the time they're full size, maybe 40, might have even been 25. So like I could not spend like $200 per chicken tractor on feeders. Again, I'm cheap. So I was like, I know what looks like that, a gutter. So I bought, I think they're 10 or 12 foot just aluminum gutter section from Home Depot. It's like $10. And then screwed it down on the bottom to a 2x4 and put, solid ends up 2 or 3 feet and then hung that from the ceiling of the carport. So the weight balanced it so it didn't flip or spin. And it would hold like, I don't know, 40 pounds of feed, 50 pounds of feed. And so all the way up until the very end, you only had to fill that once a day if you had 100 chickens in there.
Yeah, and then at the very end, twice.
Yeah, it definitely got to where they would go through it, and then you'd refill it, and they'd eat part of it.
And it was
But
hung so that it would move. Everything would move with the tractor.
yes.
In the beginning, we have our kids go in there and just, hurry along the little chickens,
Yeah.
but they learn quickly.
Yeah. And especially those Red Rangers,
They
man,
did way better.
move. The Cornish Cross are like picking them up and trying to get them to move. Now, like Marissa said, some people really have good luck with the Cornish Cross, so we don't want to just be all negative about
No.
them. But I think it's one of those circumstances where it really is like find what works well for you.
Yeah.
How many times you want to be out there every day? Do you want to move them or not? Like, we know some people who raised Cornish Cross meat chickens, just like a few, like 20, in their backyard in one stationary place. And it worked out fine for them to, give them food for 12 hours and then take it away and, help them to grow a little slower. And they weren't expecting them to move, they weren't expecting them to forage. So it all turns out really fine.
Right. And we didn't really get into this, but we made a brooder.
Yeah.
And we have some videos on it actually on our Instagram page. And it works great, but we did learn really fast that there is a number I mean, there's recommendations per size anyways, but you learn through experience what can actually fit in the space and not.
Yeah, so it's 8x8. It's an 8x8 brooder, and it's not very tall, but it's sheltered from the wind. It's sheltered from the rain, of course.
And it's outside because when we
Oh.
we raised from chick our laying hens back in Oregon,
Yeah,
we raised them in our garage before we could bring them outside.
just dust everywhere.
Yeah, lots of dust, lots of mess. And Darren's like, never again.
Yeah, never again. So it's outside. We warm it with a heat lamp when they're really little. And so it's 8x8. And I would say 8x8 comfortably did 100.
Yeah.
It was really, really successful in doing that amount of chickens until they were like 3 weeks old. And then we got them out of there, out onto the pasture, and they did well.
Yeah, Darren did some creative things with it. It has a door that lifts up so you can get
Like
large.
a whole roof lifts up.
Whole roof.
Yeah.
Raise the roof. And then obviously it's angled because we have snow, water maybe where you're from. And then on the tall side, it's a door that opens out so that you can clean out the entire coop. And then he laid down linoleum
Yeah.
just on the bottom so that it can clean well.
Yeah. So then in between, we'll finish one group and then you just sweep it all out and put it in about one bale of bedding down, and does really well. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Now the next thing that I really have to figure out this year is the optimal water source for chicks.
Yeah.
Man, they're just so messy
So
in
messy.
those pine shavings.
Soak up the water.
They just kick the pine shavings into the water trough, and then they just soak it up and it clogs it, and they can't. And so you're out there like, that part doesn't change. I haven't figured that part out yet.
Until the next.
You're out there like 3 times a day. Like,
if you're listening and you have an answer,
comment below.
Comment below, please. We, like I said, we did sell some of our chickens and had wonderful feedback from the people that purchased them and from our own family and when we have people over to eat. So we would highly recommend raising meat birds. It is definitely something that you can focus a short season on and get a good return.
Yeah.
The butchering part would be probably actually the most time consuming.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about on another podcast.
It is. And it's one of those things where scaling, like what your scale is, makes a big difference. So we'll talk about that more, I'm sure.
One cute thing that our kids did is we like to name things on our farm, and they always say, don't name it if you're going to eat it. Well, my kids named it barbecue, Thai chicken, Italian chicken, fiesta chicken. And so one of the things, though, that we have really enjoyed making with our chicken is Thai.
Yeah, and that is a great segue because this is our Thai seasoning. Now, if you haven't followed along, you don't know, we have a line of seasonings and loose leaf teas that are all natural ingredients. We love making homemade with these. We love making great tasting food accessible to your kitchen. And we want to do it without all the additives that are in so many seasoning blends and sauces that you would buy at the store. Man, if you buy a sauce, you're hard pressed to find one without corn syrup and some sort of seed oil in it. And if you're buying even a dry rub or seasoning mix, they all have anti caking agents, they have MSG. Depending on what you're getting, you really start stacking up the price if you find something that doesn't have all those in them. Well, this is very affordable. We blend them all ourselves through all our own recipes. And this Thai one, it really kicks up not the heat, but the flavor
Yeah.
of just like a rice bowl, any sort of like a lettuce wrap, all that stuff that we love to do. And that's definitely one of the ways that we love to eat those chicken thighs that I was talking about.
His favorite chicken
Yes,
thighs.
all his favorite. So you can get the Thai seasoning along with all of our other seasonings and spices on heritagehomefamilyfarm.com. Every penny that you spend there
Every single penny.
goes back into developing the property and hopefully a legacy for our kids and our family here in Southeast Idaho. So go check it out. There's this amongst many, many others. And if you haven't yet, like this video, like this podcast, subscribe, and are committed to continuing to put out information that's hopefully helpful and encouraging to you.
See you next time.